All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Talking Preps going into week 7, Cam. Is that right? Week 7? It's week
I believe
7.
that's right.
Yeah,
Week
I think
7.
that's right. Okay,
Yep.
we're going to week 7. We got a really busy show. We got State Senator Todd Johnson on. We got NCHSAA Commissioner Q Tucker on. You guys have heard all the big news with the Senate bill that's basically stripping a lot of the authority away from the association. I want you guys to hear from both sides of it tonight. You're going to hear from both people. And we're also going to do our thing. We got the guru ready to go. We got Cam ready to go. Cam's got a brand new background looking official. We got Grice. We got the historian Dale Ross. And Gary is not feeling well. Gary got 3 vaccinations today, guys. He got flu, COVID, and shingles. So
Shingles doesn't care.
I'm like, dude, why'd you get 3 in the same day? That's a little much.
They only do that to infants. Poor Gary, because the infant can't stop it.
No, that was a little much. I was like, I don't know about that, Gary, but so we got a really busy show. I'm trying to find my notes. I'm all out of sorts. And I know Sam wants to get going. We got something that's close to Sam's heart that he wants to get going on. But I'm going to start you guys out with Deion Sanders made a comment about the transfer portal that I want to get you guys to comment on. He says that the NCAA needs to add more scholarships for high school kids, because the transfer portal is just killing their opportunities. And Sam, I'll start with you. I mean, how do you feel about that? Is Prime right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that what you can do is you can use so many that have to be used towards high school students, and then you have a portion of what you can do with whatever you want. I think that's kind of what we're going to have to lead to, or it's going to get so diluted, you're going to miss out on so many people. It's going to kill high school sports. It's going to kill college sports in about 4 to 5 years, actually, too, because you're going to not be able to develop people. You're going to try to do the quick fix, and everybody's going to try to make the dollar, which they should do. If I'm in a school that's like, I got a chance to win 1 year and I get the big contract, then why not try to get the juniors and the sophomores, grown men? 22-year-old men are different than 18-year-old kids. Big difference.
Grice.
I mean, I think it's an adjustment. I think every time you look at these situations, I think kind of what we've seen, and I think Griner knows, I mean, outside of those elite guys, you're probably now trending about either half to a full level below where you were. So those group of 5 kids that were going to Charlotte, that were going to like coastal Carolina, are now kind of ending up at those like Presbyterian level and other kind of big time FCS schools. I think you just have to adapt now. I think parents have to be mindful that, hey, you get the opportunity, but the good part about it is you can play your way up. I think we saw that with Malik Creek's Jacob Roberts, was at A&T, really played out of his mind, helped to win a Celebration Bowl. Now he's one of the best guys at Wake Forest, really helping to lead that Power 5 program on the defensive side. So in one way, it does kind of change the high school recruitment, but really it's just about a change of focus for guys getting in there and really trying to overplay or kind of play where they think they should be. And if you are, the transfer portal reward you.
Alex?
People can think what they want, but this is at least the 3rd time that Deion Sanders has told it like it is. We all can be reminded of the reality that in college coaching, either you get elevated or you get terminated. We also can be reminded of the reality that what happened to Colorado this past Saturday was a good old-fashioned butt kicking. And we also can be reminded of what Coach Prime just said in this statement right here. Like it or not, in all 3 of those situations, elevated, quote unquote, elevated or terminated, quote unquote, a good old fashioned butt kicking, or quote unquote, the portal is free agency all the way to what's right with them, unquote. He's telling it like it is. Like it or not, it is what it is.
Dale, is the portal bad for high school kids?
Well, I was going to comment on do we need more scholarships? Certainly that's impacting, but more impacting is that you're getting players transferred in that have more experience. And right. Even if a kid gets a scholarship, he's still being pushed down because you've got a kid that's had 1 or 2 years and maybe they were a 3, 4 star player, even maybe. So I think the transfer portal is doing more than taking scholarships. It's taking playing opportunity for younger players. Grice made a great point that maybe you get pushed down and you prove your salt there, and then you get to hit the transfer portal to come back in at a later time. But I think this really just impacts overall the transfer portal, whether you expand scholarships or not. It impacts how many freshmen and sophomores may be contributing to teams when you can build a team through the portal and make a run with bringing in juniors and seniors.
Yeah, Guru, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts here.
Well, I think all of you guys are right. And I also think Coach Prime is right with this comment. I think that, you're going to see the haves and the have-nots, and and I like how Grice kind of mentioned, the Power Five or the Group of Five teams, how they might have to push some guys down. But I think what you're going to see is your next tier down, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, that tier of players, they're going to continue to go after the blue chip players as they always have. But you're also going to see some of the mid-tier Power Five schools that are going to start using the portal as they have been, to create these big time, flash in the pan, big time teams. We had Coach Mac Brown who came on and said the same thing about 2 or 3 years ago, how it was affecting high school football recruiting into D1 football. And especially, that was around the time of the beginning of the pandemic, I believe it was. But I think you're going to start seeing, different styles. I look back at, coaches like Al Grove, Jim Grove at Wake Forest, where, he used player development, and you ended up seeing a bunch of 4th and 5th year seniors and a bunch of 23, 24-year-old players playing on Saturdays against some of these teams that were manufactured or recruited or whatever. And I think that's going to be the different styles we see contrasting moving forward because of this.
Cam, give you the last word here. Your alma mater, Charlotte, brought in a ton of new players via the transfer portal. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, it might not be a very popular take, but I think if you're talented enough, you're going to play. If you're talented enough, you're going to be recruited. But do I think that some players do get pushed down because they're bringing in players from X, Y, and Z school? Yeah, I mean it happens. But I mean, if you tell me, okay, I can have a transfer left tackle from some FCS school, or I can have David Sanders. Give me David Sanders all day. So if you're talented enough, you're going to get recruited.
All right. We obviously we had Q Tucker on, and I asked her about the cursing rule, and I wanted Sam to react to what Q said. But first, let's play Q's clip, then we'll come back to Sam.
These are student athletes. They are high school athletes who we are trying to teach lessons so that when they get out into the real world, they don't just think that using a curse word to their boss, they're walking down the street and they don't like the way somebody looked at them, so they use a curse word to say, "Don't look at me." That's why, I mean, we have a crime rate that is, out the wazoo right now. And we want our young people to understand that, words matter. And there are so many words in the dictionary that we can use and not resort to profanity. And that's what we're trying to teach, is that there are other ways to express yourself without being profane. And if you use it in a classroom, Langston, shame on you.
All right, Gronny, you heard from Q Tucker. What are your feelings about the ejection for cursing in high school sports?
I think it definitely should be monitored in high school sports. I hate cursing. I work on it on a daily basis. I think the rule is harsh. I think ejecting a player is too, subjective. Like, you could have an official that goes crazy on you, have one official that doesn't do it at all. You're doing stuff off of something you hear, and it's not physical evidence on film that you can appeal. I would love the idea of getting a 15-yard penalty. If you get 2 of those 15 personal foul penalties, then you're disqualified from the game. They can learn from those mistakes. I think you'll do a better job, and you would actually give out more penalties with cursing if it wasn't so harsh. But the officials, they feel like, my goodness, that's a harsh penalty. They don't want to do it. So you have some that do it, some that don't do it. If you bring the penalty down a little bit, it still hurts a team. It'll kill a drive for a 15-yard penalty. You get 2 of them, they disqualify for the game. I think this is where we need to land with the aspect for the cursing rule, because it's devastating people. You're ejecting one word, boom. I've seen people say one word and they're gone, or you might have heard they said a word. All the coaches could be ejected right now. I guarantee it. It's crazy, and that's my take on it.
I heard an official use curse word this weekend up at Robbinsville, and I don't like cursing. I don't want to teach it. It's education based athletics. But I also and I listened to Q Tucker's comments about we can't question the officials. We'll start losing officials. But yet I've seen some really, and I hate to use this term, but I've seen some really shady officials in my 25 years around high school football that I don't know that I would trust every official. And I hate to say that, but I think the truth is the truth.
Well, we do overturn officials. Examples, the chain crew doesn't flip a down over and we play an extra down. A situation like this occurred way back in 2005, I think it was, or 6, and that officiating crew was unable to officiate any games in the playoffs. So I get what she's saying, that to overturn an official, especially on something like that. But if you guys heard, I questioned her on, shouldn't this be at the most a disqualification?
Yes.
Because listen, guys, whether
it's the same as fighting. It's the same as fighting.
Yeah, it's the same as hitting the guy in the face.
The penalty's too harsh, is what you're saying?
It's just too harsh. It's just give it a 15-yard penalty.
What about if you get two?
Give it an unsportsmanlike conduct.
Yes.
And 2 of those, and you're out.
Okay. And then you're not ejected, but disqualified from the
game.
I guess my thing is, how do you know who cursed? Because everybody's got a helmet on and a mouthpiece in. How do you know who said it?
That's another thing. But you're talking about more penalties would be given out for cursing, and you would fix the problem. That's what they want to do. They want to eliminate cursing.
Yes.
You would give out more penalties for cursing if it was only a 15-yard penalty.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
And
people don't want to throw out
kids don't want to hurt their team either, right? They don't want to have a chance to cause us to lose.
The problem is too harsh, so you have too much judgmental aspects. Like one official will be like, I'm black and white by the letter of the law, and you have some people that rule's crazy. So you don't know what you're dealing with, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, a kid's ejected from the game, and you're like, why is he ejected? I think he said the F word. Are you kidding me?
I think he said. That could cost you a state championship. If you did that.
Oh, it can.
Yeah,
it may have.
And I
have called somebody a state championship.
And trust me,
season.
I don't.
Sam?
I don't curse like that. Yeah.
I'm on Sam's side on that situation.
All right, Grice, I'm putting you on the spot. You're the quarterback guy. Is Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman, late at Davidson Day School, NFL bound?
Man, it's to my heart, because before Notre Dame, he was at Wake Forest doing his thing there, of course. And
but I'm a Notre Dame guy. I got to say Notre Dame.
I've got to say Wake Forest, as you know, and of course, mentored and coached by the great Chad Greer. We know he has a pedigree of getting guys, including his own son, into the NFL. I think he is. I think he's really showing by being in a pro-style offense, like Notre Dame. The Wake Forest offense was a little, I don't want to say gimmicky, but definitely doing some things that aren't done at the next level, which can cause a little concern among scouts. But the way Sam Hartman has played so far, I definitely think it warrants an NFL team taking a look at him if he continues on this path. I know they have some bigger games coming up, and of course the USC game in the future. We'll have a ton of eyes on Caleb Williams, and of course they'll be there, and hopefully Sam can put on a good performance there with him. But I definitely think he is.
Sam, I got to ask you, man. My son went to Notre Dame, so I got a little soft spot for Notre Dame. How are you only gonna have 10 guys on the line in the game-winning play, or the last 2 plays of the game?
That's
you're
poor
a coach,
management.
huh?
Poor management.
Poor management.
You got too many eyes. You got too many fans on the staff, people not doing their jobs. People are so caught up in the moment because they're in such a big game on TV versus Ohio State. The whole deal. That's the issue. You got too many guys just along for the ride and not doing their job. Sometimes you get that.
Would you have played soft that whole last series and just let them go down the field?
So say it again.
Would you have played soft defensively that whole last series and just let Ohio State go down the field?
No, absolutely not. You got to take your shots in certain plays. I'm not saying go zero coverage, but you got to do some zone blitz schemes.
Okay, Chambers.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm not a zero coverage blitz guy all the time. No.
Yes.
But no, they had their opportunity to win on the hugest stage. They gave it away.
They did.
It's
Yeah,
sad,
that
and
was-
I actually thought Notre Dame would be in the playoff at the end of the year, and that hurt them really bad losing that game.
yeah. All right, guys, we're going to be back after this commercial. Make sure you get yourself some Deer Park water. We're going to have one of the first of our 2 interviews. We're going to have Todd Johnson, the state senator, represents Cabarrus and Union County. We have Kentucky later, so make sure you join us back on the other side of this break.
Deer Park is celebrating its 150th anniversary.
Deer Park? That's good water.
You can taste how pure Deer Park is.
Deer Park, that's good water.
Deer Park, that's still good water.
All right, we're here on Talking Preps. We have Senator Todd Johnson joining us today. Senator, thanks for joining us. 3rd term, correct? Union in Cabarrus County?
That's correct. 3rd term.
All right. Last week, obviously, the big news with the Senate bill is going to take, at least on the surface, it looks to us like it's taking a lot of power away from the state association. Is that correct in your eyes?
In my eyes, it doesn't take power away, so to speak. It provides transparency and oversight that I think is desperately needed. And before we get too far down the path, I want to make sure that it's clear that everyone on this podcast that's listening and the host here know that every decision that I make, every way I look at anything regarding this type of legislation is centered around the student athlete. And so my view is coming from as a parent of a student athlete, but also from the student athlete's perspective. And too many times over the past 3-4 years, it's usually minute 45 or minute 50 before the student athlete is even mentioned. So I want to get that out of the way and make sure everyone knows the perspective that I'm coming from. So looking forward to having a conversation with you guys.
Well, I guess, again, my first question is just, you had the memorandum of understanding before, which was intended to provide oversight. We were barely into a year of that. Why do we need to go further and remove a lot more control from them and put it into the superintendent's control?
Yeah, sure. So as far as the memorandum of understanding, we worked on this, started in 2020, in the fall of 2020 is when I got involved in it. And at that point in time, there were some issues brewing. And so we kind of went down the path of trying to work with our partners to come up with a better understanding of how oversight and transparency could exist. So working with the State Board of Education to try to come up with an idea. And so in working in concert, we come up with House Bill 91. And in House Bill 91, it lays out the groundwork for what the MOU should look like. In there was an understanding that the State Board of Education was going to negotiate with the High School Athletic Association and meet these certain criteria, that we had all come to an agreement that was what was going to be best. And I do reference my notes because there's been a lot of moving parts on this, so I want to make sure that I'm representing the actions correctly. In that MOU, in House Bill 91, there were a number of gaping shortcomings, gaping holes that existed. And if it's okay with you, Langston, I'll go through a couple of those so you'll understand the need for the second bill. So in that memorandum or the guidelines for that memorandum of understanding, the state board was directed to make rules regarding hardship, eligibility, appeals, and in doing that, the rules that they made were very vague, and ultimately they just turned around and gave the athletic association the authority right back. So they took it in according to the MOU, but then gave it right back and delegated it right back to the association, which was not the legislative intent. In addition, the state board allowed the athletic association to waive certain rules. Again, when they did that, they brought in the rules, but then just delegated it right back to the association. And the common theme for the last 3 years, regardless of what Twitter says, regardless of the guy in Cary, the guy in Lake Norman that have it all figured out, regardless of what any of those guys say, ADs and coaches in this state are scared of retaliation. They're scared to death. Documents upon documents and correspondence that folks took the courage to send to us in confidence phone calls, personal conversations. They've come to us in confidence, and we say, that's big news. People need to hear that. People need to understand that what's going on. Oh, no. I can't do it. My school would, the school, my coaches, my this. They're scared to death to come out and be a whistleblower. Now, all of this being said, and I'll get back to the MOU, but all of this being said, I want to be very clear. The High School Athletic Association does a lot of things really, really, really well. That's why this legislation does not, I think some terms that were kicked around, nuclear, blows them out of the water or anything. That would be very easy. I mean, we could easily just say if you're a public education school unit in this state, you can't be a part of that association. All our members except 4 are public school units. And so we could do that, but that is not the intent. I personally want the High School Athletic Association in this state to be the most successful association in the country. And they do a lot of good things, but these are the shortcomings of where we really tried to focus. So the eligibility, internal documents that we've received in the discussions between the State Board of Education and the Athletic Association made it very clear that the Athletic Association only wanted the public school units to be able to appeal. Well, keep in mind, I'm looking at this from a student athlete and their family's perspective. So that means that the student athlete can't appeal, the coaches can't appeal, the family can't appeal. It has to be the public school unit is the only one that can appeal. And to quote the Athletic Association to the State Board of Education, we will not budge, quote, not budge on this. Again, that undermines the clear and thoroughly discussed nature and legislative intent that we put out in concert with the State Board of Education. Athletic Association agreed to an annual independent auditing by independent CPA. Well, in the end, the association continued to use the CPA, which is the same one that does their financial statements, to do their auditing. Whether you're in finance or not, that doesn't make sense. The person that's doing the books shouldn't be also the one that checks the books. You need to have a third party. I know in my business, when we're audited, we don't get the person that does our taxes to come and do our audits. We make sure that it's a third party outside of the business to actually give a fresh set of eyes. And clearly, this association is a state actor. That's already been determined by federal law in Brentwood. They are a state actor. They're going to be subject to the same things that other agencies are subject to.
But Todd, could you have made some of these changes with a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer?
Not a bad question. We thought we did. We thought House Bill 91 was the way we were going to be able to come back and do this. But when we're hearing terminology and we're reading, we're not budging on this, we're not giving on this, this isn't going to be what we're going to do. And we gave what I feel is a fair shake. And Langston, if 3 years of talks, and hours and hours and hours, when you reached out to me, I was already out of Raleigh. Thank goodness, had to get out of there. Last week was nuts. But when we got out of Raleigh, I was back here in my office in Raleigh. I've got boxes of documents and emails and correspondence and 990s and research on this stuff that 3 years, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of hours, no telling countless staff hours that we put into it. At some point in time, we've got to know that we've got a partner that's going to actually negotiate in good faith with us. And it came to the determination, especially after House Bill 91 was implemented and then the MOU came out, it was clear that that was not going to be the path we would be able to go. So what we did, and basically what this new bill that destroys the association is likes to get thrown around, is just saying you're going to do what we agreed to begin with, what us and the state board agreed to begin with. And at some point in time, I hope we can actually talk about what this bill does, because it's being mischaracterized.
I definitely want to get to that. How do you feel, though, Senator Johnson, when you see all the support from you? You said that a lot of people feel like they don't want to go against the association out of fear of retribution. But you're seeing all these support statements, emails, posts. I stand with the NCHSAA. There was one today. by an organization out of Raleigh that said we're supporting the NCHSAA. You see kids, I support the NCHSAA. What do you think when you see that the coaches associations, the AD associations, they feel like the NCHSAA is being wronged, and you're saying that these same people are telling you they're scared to talk about the association?
Well, my guess is, again, the High School Athletic Association does really some things really, really well, and so I I love the fact that people say I stand with the High School Athletic Association and what's happening to them are wrong. My guess is they haven't read the documents, they haven't read the bill, they haven't read the boxes of stuff, they haven't spent hundreds of hours combing through this, they haven't heard the parents crying to you because they can't get their kid on the field. Onslow County, I mean, it was very publicized. You've got a scholar athlete, top 3 in her class, being told that she can't play her senior year. What does it take, Langston? We have to file a bill. After it had gone through the process, it takes, I think it was Senator Lazaro down in Onslow County had to file a bill. And then all of a sudden, no, oh, yeah, you're right, we're good. Legislation is always the path of last resort. It's not something we want to do. Myself and Senator Sawyer and Senator McGinnis and our other colleagues that have not been necessarily at the tip of it, we don't sit on Jones Street and sit there and say, how are we going to go after and screw that association? That's not even remotely. I would love not to even be messing with this. But then again, the student athlete's worth it. It's worth the hundreds of hours. It's worth the research. It's worth reading all that stuff.
Did something change with the association? They've been doing this pretty much the same thing for as long as I've been doing it since '88. And they've been running the same way since '88 under Charlie Adams. I don't think Q Tucker's running it any differently than Charlie Adams.
And I want to piggyback on that, Langston. You know,
go ahead, Deb.
Alex and I both are heavy education-based athletics people, and we both understand what's happening in other associations across the nation. And I don't think there's a question that the NCHSAA is, if they're not the best, there's nobody that's better. There might be some that are equal. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't things that they shouldn't be doing better, and there aren't areas that there shouldn't be some more transparency. But just to piggyback on your question, what has changed? Because as far as state associations, athletic associations go, in a direction towards student athletes, there's none matched. I have not seen any matched. And I've looked closely at Texas and Georgia and, you know, the great football states and athletic states. So that's just a piggyback on. Why all of a sudden do we have to have legislation jump in 2020? We know
and I agree.
But we would rather you talk.
Yeah, I agree that they're very good at. They're definitely the richest in the country, by far the richest in the country. The next closest is Iowa. And we're talking about Iowa. There's one person per square mile. I mean, this is not a big state. And this slide is about I'd say 8 to 12 months old, probably 12 months old now. We're over 40 million. Iowa is around 17 million. You get down to Florida, Texas is down around 7 million. I mean, you're getting into these are great states that have great associations with. I mean, you think high school football, you automatically think Texas, and there's. I'd hate to know just how many schools they actually have. I don't know it, but I can guarantee you it's 4 to 5, 6 times the size of us. What are we doing with that money? Why do we have that money sitting on the sideline?
To your point, Senator Johnson, the Hope County Superintendent Rodney Shotwell put out a piece today that showed from 2010 to 23, the state association returned almost $23 million to its schools, to its member schools. So, I mean, they are giving some back. But I hear your point.
When was that? What was the date range on that?
It was 2010-11 to 2022-23.
How much of that was in the last 2 years?
That let me see if I can pull it up. Alex, go ahead and ask your question. That's why I see if I can pull the rest of that slide up.
Okay, before I ask a question, I'll comment to that point in terms of the last 2 or 3 years. Let's keep in mind that the impetus for the NCHSAA endowment during the tenure of the late Charlie Adams, watching over us from above, is to prepare for that unprecedented rainy day, which beset us over the last 2 or 3 years, beyond the control of any of us and anyone else in this world. There were high school athletic associations that lost their financial solvency in the wake of the pandemic. Several of them practically went under, and the NCHSAA, due to decades of exemplary fiscal responsibility and monetary policy, was not in that position at all. So that being said, it's tough, or it's a formidable challenge to isolate those 3 years alone because of the extenuating circumstances. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, we certainly can look at each year, and we'll.
Well, yeah, they're the years. It's about 10 million.
But that's what that's what it was there for, Alex. That's why we built that.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. That's precisely why it was there, and it came through. Now, in terms of where we are right now, Senator, if I may ask several questions. The first one being, I think we all can agree that one of the things that the High School Athletic Association can continue to cultivate, as all of us in any business endeavor or political arenas or wherever, including it in the media world where we are, in education and everywhere, one of the things that we can cultivate is greater transparency in all that we do. That being said, do you think that there is any irony to the fact that legislation calling for a state high school athletic association to have greater transparency is being handled in the middle of the night, basically knowing that no one is going to be in the legislative gallery on Jones Street at that point, contrary to the foundational premise of sunshine laws and public business being done in the public's view, where we're calling for greater transparency, but legislation is being done in the middle of the night? Do you see an irony?
Yeah.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think the first off, nothing is done in the dark of night. Do you know what time the Senate voted on this bill? The Senate voted on this bill unanimously, by the way, bipartisan, unanimous support in the Senate around 10 a.m. on Friday morning. The gallery was full. Yeah. The gallery was full. The chamber was full. It was voted on unanimously. So how was that in the dark of the night?
How much of the information about the bill was put out before the bill that
excellent question. This bill passed the Senate.
Able to know about?
House Bill 452, Senate Bill 636 passed the Senate back in May or April, basically in its current form. I mean, there's some technical tweaks that went into it. Passed the Senate at that point in time, went to the House, was heard in House Education, went to the Rules Committee, was heard in House Rules. This is no surprise. To say that it was passed in the dark of the night, man, that's a red herring. That is, oh man, we got our hand caught in the cookie jar. Let me find something, because that's what it is.
I think because it was tacked on.
It was ratified during the middle of the day in the Senate.
But it was tacked on to the insurance bill. I think that's
it was tacked on to a bill in the middle of the night, an insurance bill, which for the interests of this state had to pass. We all know that.
Yeah. Oh, it had to pass. Tell me what was in the insurance bill then that had to pass.
Why?
Come on.
No,
exactly. That's my
point. It's not your point. We're high school athletic people. We're not insurance people.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's keep context to who we are and what we have more interest in to know about up front. And of course, to Alex's point, if we are seeking transparency, and I think every one of us agree that there needs to be some more transparency with the NCHSAA. I think it would help people if there was more transparency, if the endowment had more transparency, that people understood it better. But there's not.
Yeah. So the endowment that's now been moved to a foundation.
So we need that. There's a place that more transparency needs to occur, without question.
Right.
Did that catch you guys' attention, Senator, when they created that foundation to basically handle the money before?
Absolutely.
That happened right before the bill passed.
That's irony. This actually, they had a stakeholder meeting back on April the 26th of 22. The NCAA ruling was in 21. Let's see. Then a foundation committee was founded on December 13th of 22. And then all the way up to spring of 23, the foundation's been voting on the existing MOU today. The one that's in effect today, not counting the current bill, says that you've got to submit that rule to the Board of Education. To date, and I checked today, as of September 25th, nothing has been submitted to the Rules Review Commission.
So you felt they were going around the
I think it was not in good faith, because we've met with them. We've met with them multiple times, and that was never brought up until we were able to find it.
Had they done that, would this measure have been taken the other day?
I think that is not the direct reason for this bill. The direct reason for this bill was the fact that the MOU was a farce compared to what the legislative intent that was agreed upon. That's why the action of this bill took place. Okay, that just fed the fire.
Okay, let's move forward, because the bill's passed. How are the student athletes going to be affected? How are the coaches going to be affected? They feel like I've talked to a lot of athletic directors and coaches. Some of them agree with what you've done. There's one on our show who agrees with what you've done. But I also hear from a lot of them are concerned they're not going to have a voice anymore. But I'm just curious, how is it going to work moving forward with the state association? Are they still going to, do what they kind of have done and just answer to you guys on transparency issues?
Okay, so a couple things I got to unpack there. But Please. One thing I just wanted, before I missed it, 2009 is when the state started looking in this. There's a letter from 2009 dated October 1st. This is the breakup letter between the University of North Carolina High School Athletic Association, citing that we have been increased attention from the state treasurer, the state auditor's office, a number of things. So this didn't just happen overnight. It didn't happen when Anson County had their issue. That's all. I mean, again, smoke and mirrors. My guarantee is the guy in Cary, the guy in Lake Norman has never seen this letter. So that peel back all of that. Now, so what's going to happen for students? Because in the end, that's at the end of the day. That is what is important. This bill now, if a student or a student athlete's family feel like they've been wronged, they're going to have the right and ability to appeal that decision. Even if their school doesn't want to back them up, even if their athletic director doesn't want to back them up, that parent's going to have that control to be able to appeal their decision, because it's their kid's future.
Who will they appeal to? I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to get clear.
No, that's fine. It will be the State Board of Education and the appeals group that they have established.
So if the school doesn't want to support the athlete because they don't feel the athlete has a standing to be supported, why would we end around the coach, the AD, and the principal if they don't view a standing? Why would we end around that, allow an end around, and waste legislative and whoever is involved in this appeal, waste that time?
Well, I don't think if there's a student athlete involved that it's a waste of time. I believe that their future and the parents or their family and that student athlete, it's never going to be a waste of time for them to be able to play sports, because at the end of the day, that's what they're doing. They're playing sports. They should be trying to this is teaching leadership. The majority of these kids are not going to colleges to play sports. They're not going to be professional athletes. Good luck, by the way, Langston, on your son. I read that article with your son and what he's doing. I hope he's successful, and I've spent a lot of time at Carolina courts as well. But at the same time, these parents need to be able to keep their kids on the field if they feel like they're wrong. I don't agree with my principal. I don't agree with my AD or my coach all the time. That just happens. I mean, we're going to disagree on stuff, and the coach can say, you know what, you screwed up, young man. You made a mistake, young lady. You don't have. We don't believe that this is the right kind of appeal. But then I trust the process.
But that's not just the coach.
I trust those independent people.
It's the AD and it's the principal. So if you don't have the support of 2 levels above you or 3 levels above you, and having been involved in this as long as I have been, because I'm an old man, as you can tell, parents complain about things, and a lot of times not justifiable. That would be a waste of time. This is the same reason when you go into a court.
I just see a long line of appeal. I see that line being
I can go sue somebody, but a judge will throw it out if there's no standing, right? If I want to bring case against somebody and the judge looks at it and says, well, you can't show me how you're harmed and you can't. This is the same kind of situation I see that you've got 3 levels.
But this brings back the retribution piece. This brings back the retribution piece. Maybe the athletic director or the principal or the coach they just want to show support so that way the school's not on the radar. Now, is it real? I don't know. Over 100 correspondence and communications with folks. The common theme through all of them, I can't say anything. I don't want to get them upset with me. I don't want to, I've got to be careful because, you get blind coin tosses. That's another thing that hadn't been discussed. You get all these different things that play in there. How do I know that it's not going to come against my school? Hey, young man, you just need to take your medicine and sit out. That is wrong, guys. We can fundamentally disagree. I don't care if it takes a month to go through the appeals. If the student or the student athlete's family feels like they've been wrong, every person should have a right to have an appeal. Our country was built on this, guys.
Okay, no argument. Hold on now. There's no argument for me there. But I want to get, because in the interest of time, I want to get to what's going to happen. Okay, so we know about the appeals. The NCHSAA is wanting to go to 7 classes. Is that going to be allowed? Can we have 7 classes? Who's going to handle the playoffs? Who's going to handle state championships? And who's going to decide where those things are being held? That type of thing.
Yeah, so gameplay rules, anything gameplay rules is still the High School Athletic Association. All we've looked at is student participation, health and safety, appeals, establishing fees, and reporting. We're not touching gameplay. Again, High School Athletic Association does an amazing job of that stuff. Let them do that.
So their decision is the last decision on those things. They don't have to get approval from Catherine Truitt on those things?
No. Anything gameplay related is their rules. Like many of us have said and many of us have seen, they understand that stuff. We don't understand that. And I think it's very important to point out that the legislature isn't going to be involved in any of this.
But our last discussion
we're not right. It's going to be the executive branch that's involved, not us.
So our last discussion though says anything game related is their basket to handle isn't true, because a person, let's say a player gets disqualified or ejected from a game, and they want to appeal that, and the coach says, no, you were justifiably ejected. And the principal says, no, I'm not going to do that. And, we feel this is justifiable. And the parent thinks, nope, I want to go. So this player's not allowed to play because he's been ejected. And according to rules, they can't play, say, in the next game. So that's a decision. That is one decision that would go through an appeal that would normally be an appeal to the NCHSAA. But it sounds like it's going to be an appeal to another body now. And so it does impact gameplay.
Well, as far as establishing the gameplay rules.
Yes.
Well, that's part of the rules. If you've been ejected from a game, you can't play in the next game. That's a rule.
Well, he's saying they're going to have an appeal, but you're saying you have an appeals committee for that thing, for those types of things.
Right. They're not legislators. They're not executive branch. This is a third-party group of folks who based on who they appoint, because the legislature doesn't appoint any of that.
How do we reconcile the educational and formational foundation of education-based athletics in such situations, in whether it's an ejection or something else? I'll use an example right here. If it's a free-for-all on a student athlete by student athlete, family by family, case by case basis, to have this appeals process, which is independent of gameplay, yet interrelated to gameplay inevitably, then someone like Superintendent Andrew Houlihan could get undercut 20 times in terms of what he wants for his school system to be in terms of the perspective of the formative nature of education-based athletics, if this independent committee all of a sudden can usurp what the prevailing philosophy and practice for Union County schools is in terms of complying with said rules. How are these two things going to coexist when this appeals committee inevitably has an impact on gameplay, which you say remains within the jurisdiction and purview of the High School Athletic Association?
Good question.
The setting of the rules and the setting of the gameplay rules is in the Athletic Association. The enforcement and the appeals process is in the State Board of Education. So when you were posing the question about Andrew Houlihan and Union County Public Schools and what he wants to do, love Andrew Houlihan. He does a great job. We've got one of the top school systems in the state, one of the top producing athletic programs in the state right here in Union County. But at the end of the day, as much as I love Union County Public Schools, as much as I love all the state championship banners hanging all over this county, that student athlete is still going to be my number one priority before this is over. And if that means we have to take each one of these cases one by one, we will do that because it matters. And if it doesn't matter to everybody, it matters to that one family.
The state association passed an NLI policy that you guys took away pretty quickly. Where does that stand? Is North Carolina going to get NLI?
So hold on one second. I got notes on that too. I got notes.
Oh no, please find your notes.
I want to make sure I'm speaking the right way on that.
I just appreciate you giving us the time, man.
Oh yeah. So let's see the NIL. Let's see. Back in 2021 was when the NCAA changed.
Yes.
So in May of this year, the High School Athletic Association approves NIL policy.
Yes.
But again, in talking with the MOU and how the MOU works, and this is why the MOU doesn't, that we have, House Bill 91, it hasn't been filed. It hasn't gone through the Rules Review Commission. It hasn't. That's a policy versus a rule. Something of that nature, it has to go through the process to be approved. Now, this is where we ended up on NIL, through the process of this bill. So when it passed through the Senate, it was heard through the committees. When it went to House Education, and it was heard through House Education, went to House Rules, which was not during the middle of the night. Sorry to keep coming back to that, but that's when there's 170 members that have heard this bill and have seen this bill at some point in time, and they know it exists. Yeah. It was decided, and I agree wholeheartedly, we're going to remain virtually silent on NIL. And the reason is this. NIL is a massive policy discussion that really needs to be standalone, heard in every single committee with nothing else. We're not putting high school athletics with insurance and going to talk about that here. NIL needs to be a standalone discussion, and it was agreed to amongst the folks that were working on this bill. We're going to remain basically silent. All we did in this bill was notate that NIL rules would have to work through the State Board of Education. So we didn't ban it, we didn't endorse it, we didn't approve it, we didn't disapprove it.
I'm saying NLI. I had a kid signing NLI today. Excuse me on that. But where do we?
It's got me messed up, Langston.
I know. Where do we stand on NIL? And what do you think we're going to have it in North Carolina in the next 12 months?
I don't know if we'll have it, but I can tell you this. My personal belief is I don't have an opinion. I think transfer protocol and all this NIL stuff has done a number on college sports. That's just my personal opinion. It's here. It's part of our life, so we've got to make a decision. I don't have a decision on that, Langston. I don't have. I see the pros and I see the cons. We've got great athletes that have an opportunity to, and again, student focused, have an opportunity to make a deal and get those contracts and all that stuff. So what I believe is I'm going to remain open-minded about it as it works through the process, hear the pros and cons, and see. I truly just don't have an opinion on it at this point in time. I do know that there's some members in the General Assembly actually have student athletes that have excelled to the point where they could probably get an NIL contract. But then others may say, yeah, I just don't you're kind of taking away the whole point of high school sports. So I understand both sides, but I'm just not that's why we basically remain silent on this, because we just wanted to kind of put the pause button and then let's have an overall discussion and where we can get public comment, hear from the stakeholders, hear from people who have done this in other states. I mean, even through what we've done with the High School Athletic Association, I think we've spoken with 20-something states, associations, and different folks to try to figure out what the norm is. And so I don't know the answer to your question, Langston. Short, long way of saying that. I think there will be discussions about it.
Sure. As we wrap up, I just kind of want you to put a period on the sentence and kind of explain to people what's going to happen. Kind of just wrap it up for me. What's going to happen with the state association and how high school athletics are run in North Carolina moving forward, because we're at an inflection point. So what's going to happen now?
The way I see it and the way I hope and the way I think is this thoughtful legislation has gone through the process. The High School Athletic Association, my hope is that when I'm 80 years old and looking at my great-grandchildren play sports, the High School Athletic Association is running high school sports in North Carolina. I hope they're still there. They're still plugging away and doing great things for our state. So that's how I see long-term where we're going. In the meantime, for that progression to occur and for that association to be involved in high school sports and or public sports in North Carolina, it's going to be transparent. It's going to have accountability. It's going to have the ability for students to have a say in their future. It's going to involve the parents. It's going to involve all the stakeholders, and it's not going to be about what this person over here says about this person. It's going to be a collective in terms of what's best for the student athlete. So we will move forward from this. The High School Athletic Association isn't going away. There's not a single one out of 170 members of this General Assembly that want that to happen. They do good work, guys. I know that may fall on deaf ears considering some of the other stuff you've heard me say in print, but in the end, they do a good job at what they do. I think there's one senator that said it best. The High School Athletic Association does an unbelievable job of making sure the trains run on time. The problem is who gets to sit on that train. That's going to be up to the State Board of Education and DPI.
Okay. Well, Mr. Johnson, I appreciate you taking the time out to join us and giving your side of it. And, thanks for coming on and giving us the time. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the first part of our interviews. Now we're going to come back with Chris in Chris's Corner. We hadn't seen that in a while, so we'll be right back after this break. Get yourself some Deer Park water.
Deer Park is celebrating its 150th anniversary. Let's take a look back.
Deer Park, that's good water.
You can taste how pure Deer Park is.
Deer Park, that's good water.
Filtered naturally beneath the earth for a crisp, refreshing taste.
Deer Park.
Deer Park.
Deer Park. Deer Park.
That's still good water.
After 150 years, there's only one thing left to say. Deer Park, that's still good water.
How did you all get in here?
All right, guys, here we are back again for Chris's Corner. We haven't done this a while. Looking forward to week 7 of the 2023 high school football season here in North Carolina. And we've got some great games around the state. I love covering football from Waynesville to Wilmington, Murphy to Manio, and all points in between. And we got a big game, or a couple big games, but we're going to start off up there in Alamance County. You got Eastern Alamance traveling over to Burlington Memorial Stadium, one of the great stadiums in this state, to face Walter Williams and the Bulldogs. If you look back at the last 3 games in this series, they've been some barn burners. I know last year they played twice, including in the third round of the playoffs. You had a 28-21 game, a 24-27 overtime game, and this is really the student versus his protege. You got Coach John Kirby, Patrick Stokes. It's been a great series. Looking at Eastern Alamance, they have got some dogs back there that the Bulldogs are going to have to try to stop. Joshua Murray, quarterback Tyreek Samuel in the backfield. So I think that's going to be a great game. Looking forward down the list. Hertford County at Northeastern. Northeastern may be one of the hottest teams in the state, especially over there in the 2A ranks. Coach Antonio Moore has been a friend of the program. We featured him here on Talking Prep several times in the past, and that team is just really on fire here lately, especially lighting up the scoreboard on the offensive side. Junior quarterback Travaris Jones has just been unstoppable. He's got about 1,500 yards passing, I think about 19 touchdowns to 4 interceptions or something like that. I mean, it's just been crazy. And then senior running back, I think it's Tysell Spencer, has just been lighting it up for Northwestern or Northeastern. Last week in their game against Edenton Holmes, we know that Holmes is always great. You got Coach Paul Hargard. He amassed like 216 yards on 8 carries last week. I think if you're a math major, that's something like 27, 28 yards a carry. So that Northeastern team is moving up the rankings really quickly. We'll talk about that here momentarily. A little bit closer here to the Charlotte area, you've got Drone going over to Mitchell. Drone's a team that I think is moving up the charts with a bullet in the 1A ranks. We've talked in the past about Nigel Dula. You pair him with quarterback Eli Tillery, and that is a great team. And then one of the other big games is two teams that I think, a team that's not underrated at all, 71st. Of course, they started the season ranked number 1 in the preseason. But you got Cape Fear. That's a team I think that is kind of one of those teams lurking in the weeds in the 3A East playoffs. I think Cape Fear is a team that could hurt some feelings, come November, December in the playoffs. They got a basketball player turned receiver in Jeremiah Melvin that's averaging about 100 yards a game receiving. So that's a great-looking team. 71st, if you remember, you had Anthony Quinn Jr., who transferred over to Raven Gap. I had a chance to see Anthony Quinn Jr. and Raven Gap live and in color this past weekend. One of the most stellar athletes, but that really hasn't slowed down 71st at all. DeAndre Nance is really getting it done. He is one of the best dual threat quarterbacks I've seen this year. So 71st is continuing to get things done. And then looking right there, I've got the game Hayesville at Murphy. Also, you see Andrews at Swain County, and heck, we could even throw Robbinsville and Cherokee into the mix. Smoky Mountain Conference is really one of the best conferences in the state. All 6 of those teams are just phenomenal in the 1A ranks. So if you're in the western half of the state, I'd certainly check them out. And boy, that's a lot of talking here in a second. So for Chris's Corner Way, that's pretty good. But I think we're going to go ahead and start looking at the rankings and looking at some other key stuff. And I see all my friends here, Brady, bunching their way into the screen. So I guess we're moving on to the next round. And here we go. Let's start out with the 8-man. My Chris Hughes, top 10 8-man teams. Wayne Christian right there at the top of the mix. Man, you talk about some 8-man football. Again, I'm a huge proponent of it. This is in fact the same rankings of last week. Not a lot of changes in the 8-man bunch, but you got teams that really know how to score some points. I enjoy the 8-man. I know that I seem to be in the minority when it comes to a lot of people in the state of North Carolina.
Still waiting on film. Still waiting on film on this.
We've said it. I need Grice's gems from 8-man. I need to see it.
Yeah. And let's see where we at next, Langston. Here we go. Let's look at the 11-man football here, the NCHSAA. Providence State coming in number 1. Raven Gap right there again. I saw Raven Gap just totally dismantle a really, really good Robbinsville team Friday night up there in Robbinsville. This Raven Gap team may have one of the best defensive fronts I've seen in high school football, and I've seen a lot of football since the late 70s, early 80s. That's a really good-looking team. Charlotte Christian, Hickory Grove, Trinity Christian out of Fayetteville is coming on strong. And again, some of the local teams we've got here, Cannon School, Metrolina, High Point, some of the who's who really private school football. And again, I think a lot of people kind of lose sight of the fact that we've got some really, really good private school football here in the state of North Carolina. Moving on up in the rankings, here's the top 10 in the 1A, Mount Airy, Tarboro, Robbinsville, even with that 36-0 loss to Raven Gap, I think that Robbinsville team is absolutely a top 2 or 3 team. I almost thought about moving them up even with the loss, but of course you see Mount Airy and Tarboro right there. That Robbinsville team is good. I talked to Cutler Adams after the game. What a tremendous running back, just one of the better athletes I've seen. Drone, again, their team going up really quickly. That Drone team is going to be a serious problem for some teams in the Western 1A bracket here in a few weeks. Swain County, again, we talked about it. You see all those SM Smoky Mountain Conference teams there. North Rowan had that big victory over Thomasville, and Eastern Randolph's a team coming up. So, again, a lot of exciting football here in the next coming weeks for 1A. We'll move it on over to the 2A. We got a big game coming up this week that's going to really affect these 2A rankings. Let's take a look at them. There you go, Clinton right there. I think it's Clinton and everybody else, in my opinion. And 2A, but of course, here in the West, you've got Monroe. I know we've got a big game with them to talk about here in a bit. Northeastern, I mentioned, one of the hottest teams. Defending champion, East Duplin. I think they're on about a 20-21 game winning streak. Salisbury, Forest Hills. Again, got some Lincoln County, Catawba County flavor right there with West Lincoln, Bunker Hill, Burns. Again, a lot of football here in the 2A ranks. And we'll move it on up. And again, this is a lot of talk in a really short time. But 3A is one of the most competitive.
Help him out, Grace. Help him out.
Oh, I wanted to. He's been going so good. I mean,
it's okay. It's okay. This is what I've been doing for years. 3A.
Yeah, we got some good teams out there. I'm excited. So yeah, we got 3A.
Hey, I don't know if you guys noticed it. I feel like it kind of slid in under the radar, but we got a different team at number 1. Just after really doing a lot of dissecting of the film. Again, I think these two teams are just so microscopic good that there's very few differences between Crest and Dudley. The difference for me, and really looking at the film, is the fact that I think the defense at Crest is finally starting to catch up with that offense. We know that offense.
And based upon Chris, a distant third, West Charlotte. I love it. Good job.
I see 4 Western teams at the top of the poll, so they're all going to have to go through each other.
Yep.
Exactly.
We already mentioned 71st, Northern Nash. I think that there's 6 distinct dogs in the 3A. And I'm not saying Scotland is a drop off at 7 because I think Scotland's still pretty good, but I think that those top 6 are definitely distinctive from the rest of the bunch.
Grice, is 3A better than Fight Club this year?
It's deeper. I think you look at some of the guys, like, Guru talks about Scotland County. When you think about, playing in November, December, when you look back in that backfield and see, what's his name, that Zay Jones kid, Mr. Football, nominee, as we'll talk about later, you got to stop him 30 times in a football game in that cold December. That's a team that I think is going to be there. We know Coach Richard Bailey's no stranger to playoff football. So I think this 3A is getting there. You look at Hickory, even at 10, as dominant as they've been this year, and playing
East
pretty
Lincoln,
well.
19-game
I think Lincoln wasn't a few weeks ago. They're my dark horse to keep moving up, honestly. Joe Glass is doing what Joe Glass does.
All right, Guru, Fight Club.
And here we are looking at the Fight Club. And again, Grimsley right there, number 1, top team in the state. Butler right there, Weddington. Weddington really flexed some muscles, and still, I don't care that Coach TK's Dutch Fork teams lost a few games. I still think that is an extremely tough win for Andy Capone and all the guys down there. Rollsville, Huff, Cleveland, Mooresville moving up. Hoggard's really impressing me coming out of the East. Watauga, and in this bunch, and I hate to say this, a few of these teams kind of moved up because we had some serious losses in the top 10. New Bern, a team that's now they were 5-0 going into last week. They lost big to Jacksonville. Now they've lost all their games this week, forfeited a bunch of games. They're now 0-6. So we got some teams moving up into the bracket. But again, 4A, it's still going to be a lot of fun moving into the playoffs.
Cam, how good is that Mooresville team? Greater Metro, your neck of the woods.
They're good. They're really good on the defensive end. I was at that Hickory Ridge Boardsville game, and they were up 42-7 at one point, and then Hickory Ridge, led by the offensive coordinator Jonathan Grice, started to mount a comeback. But at the same time, I mean, when you get out to a lead that big, it's hard to come back on a team. And defensively, they're checking all the boxes.
Yeah, they look to be a really strong team. All right, guys, we're going to be right back after this break. Get yourself some Deer Park water. We're going to have an interview with Q Tucker on the backside of this.
Deer Park is celebrating its 150th anniversary.
Deer Park, that's good water.
You can taste how pure Deer Park is.
Deer Park, that's good water.
Deer Park, that's still good water.
All right, so you guys just heard from Senator Johnson. Now we have Q Tucker, the commissioner of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. What we heard was the legislators felt like you guys didn't abide by HB 91 the way they felt that you should have. And they also feel like the appeals process, they were asking for students to have singular appeals. And he says that you guys said that only schools could appeal, and the NCHSAA was not budging on that. Am I correct in that, Alex and Dale?
That's right.
That was what he said.
That's what he said. And so let's start there and get your response to those two things. Did you follow HB 91 the way it should have been followed? And were you guys line in the sand on appeals being school-based and not individual-based?
We followed House Bill 91 based upon what we believe to be House Bill 91. We have legal counsel. We negotiated a memorandum of understanding, which we signed in April or March 14th, 2022. So we did exactly what we thought we were supposed to do as it related to House Bill 91. My thing with if Senator Johnson says that we weren't doing what we should have done, it certainly would have been nice for them to have told us that prior to introducing Senate Bill 636 in April. Prior to that, I had no way of knowing that that's what they thought. As it related to students and parents being able to appeal, parents and students appeal this current school year through their schools. It wasn't a matter of the NCHSAA not budging on that. Anytime we ever have had a parent call us and say we want to appeal, then we've said to the schools, we've said to them, reach out to the school. And oftentimes we would call the school and say, go ahead and submit the appeal. So, I just I think that there certainly is a disconnect and there is total miscommunication in terms of what they believe we did and what we thought we were doing in concert with the State Board of Education. So obviously they don't believe the State Board of Education is doing what they're supposed to do, and I guess that's the reason they X them out of this current bill.
When did you find out
On the
about the
appeal,
bill?
oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say on the appeals process, they don't want to have to go through the school. So if the coach and the AD and the principal says no, this is not an appealable process, they want them to be able to go around and be able to appeal directly. So that's what they say they're going to set up.
And that's what he said you guys were against.
We always have been against individuals who are not members of this organization just appealing. The school is the advocate for students. That would be like my students when I coached at Reedsville. My girls didn't like the way I was doing something. So instead of advocating through me or allowing the school to be the advocate, well, they just simply would go around me and go to somebody else. That's just not the way typical organizations work. And I don't know, if other state associations across the country just allow non-members to be able to appeal. But if that was something that they just really absolutely wanted, it certainly again would have been nice to have that as a point of discussion with the state board.
So you didn't tell them absolutely not on that because he made it sound like they told you that and you guys said absolutely we're not going there.
Well, I don't care what he told you. I did not, and to be honest with you, Senator Johnson and I have never sat down and had this kind of a conversation as it relates to the appeal process.
Okay.
So, when we were negotiating, we didn't negotiate the appeal process with the General Assembly. We negotiated a memorandum of understanding with the state board, and the state board knew exactly what our wishes were, and that is always to have the member to be the advocate for the student.
Alex?
Commissioner Tucker, is there something to be said, just the seeming reality that, so we had a 4-year window on a memorandum of understanding. We barely get through 1 year, and here we are again. And there's a seeming request from the state legislature for greater accountability and transparency, yet the work of the legislature relative to another memorandum, whatever you want to call it, is being done in the middle of the night. And we want greater accountability and transparency from an association, but is being infused into other pieces of legislation after midnight. What irony, if any, do you see in that?
Well, again, I think we can't discount the fact that this started early April with Senate Bill 636. And 636 was, it was channeled through different committees, and we actually made some presentations to various committees at the General Assembly. And we thought, and actually, and I hope he told you that we met with them in June at the legislative office building, a room full of senators and several representatives and legislative liaison. And so at that time, there was nothing emphatically said about an appeal process or about the fact that if we don't get what we want, this is the way we're going to do it. We sent a box of materials to the Joint Legislative Group at the end of June at their request. To this day, we have never received any documentation, any email or note to say, thank you for honoring our request. You did everything we wanted, had about 11 different pieces of information that they wanted. They sent it to the State Department of Public Instruction. I'm sorry, sent it to the State Board of Education. They then sent it to us because we had to get all this done.
Mhm.
So we have been as transparent as we could be in the broad open daylight.
Mhm.
And so for a bill that is no longer Senate Bill 636 to be introduced at the 11th hour, as I said in my comments on Friday, that is a blindside hit. It was a punch in the gut. I don't know any other way to say it. And obviously, it worked because all of the opponents of that piece of the legislation, and there wasn't a lot they could do about it. It was attached to another bill. Why do you attach it to another bill that has nothing to do really with high school athletics unless you think you can't get what you want passed in a standalone bill?
So you felt blindsided.
Absolutely, I did. I had
Well,
no.
I do too, Langston. I appreciate the senator talking with us, and I want fair commentary on both sides. But
Mhm.
that was slid in. That's those. I never in federal government and state government. I never liked these attached things because what you're doing is attaching something to something you know is popular
And it
and
had
is
to
going to
pass. At
slide
Alex's
through.
point, it had to
And
pass.
yeah, and this is going to be pulled in. I think that's what he missed in the darkness part of it. And when I asked him about it, he started asking me, asked us, what did we know about the insurance part of it?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, we're concerned about high school athletics,
Right.
and I'm not an insurance person. If I
And you're
was,
saying that high school athletic bill should have been its own bill, and we can
it
discuss
should
that.
be its own bill. I think so.
And it was its own bill, Senate Bill 636.
Yeah.
And if you notice their comments, they don't say a lot about Senate Bill 452. They
Right.
keep referring to Senate Bill 636,
That's correct.
which they just carved out and attached to this bill.
Another thing he talked about a lot, Q, was that there's a silent majority. Because I pointed out to him there were so many people showing you guys support online and Twitter and Facebook, just everywhere I looked. It was I stand with NCHSAA. I did a search. It was like 500 and some odd comments of that. He says for every one person that we could find that supports you, there are more or an equal
10.
amount that 10 that
He said
don't
10.
out of fear. They feel like if I say anything that's against the association is going to retaliate against me. Is that how you run your organization? Are you aware of anything like that?
Oh, I'm aware because he said that to us in that room that I spoke about in June. He said for everyone, he didn't say 10, he said for everyone, we get that many more. And so, I mean, you cannot address a matter if you don't know who it is who says they're afraid of you or there is retaliation. So my question, guys, is how do we retaliate?
That's my question.
How do we can't keep people out of the playoffs because that's pretty obvious. Okay, well, you didn't do what we thought you should have done, or you said this in the newspaper, so you won't make the playoffs. How do you do that? And then it be hidden from anybody. So that's the piece of this that I don't understand. But Charlie Adams said this to me one time. I went into him and I said, Charlie, we have a whole lot of folk who just don't like whatever the issue was. And he asked me, he said, how many? Well, I said, well, it's a whole lot, Charlie. How many?
Mm.
So when people tell you that for every one, there are 10, okay, so now is he trying to say that if you saw 500, then he's gotten 1,000 comments to the contrary? I don't know that. That's hard for me to believe.
Right.
So, Q, my argument has always been, how does the NCHSAA retaliate? And how do they retaliate in the darkness so that nobody else knows? And thus, if you were retaliated against, you're not going to speak up and be able to show that, well, we said this, and the NCHSAA kicked us out of the playoffs.
You have a whole board to answer to. It's hard for her to just.
I mean, you can't. I don't know how that can be done. That's the one thing I've never understood in that argument is the retaliation. How are they going to retaliate and not be known?
Yeah. Q, I wanted to ask, he's talking about basically having an open appeals process where anybody can appeal. If that were the case, and it's going to be the case, how long would that appeals line be?
Well, it could be really, really long. I can tell you right now, I had an appeal. So, and here we beg the question: what kind of appeals are we talking about? So, I had someone today who said, "I want to appeal an injection a kid dropped the F bomb, but
Mhm.
it wasn't that bad.
Mhm.
There was, it wasn't, I guess that wasn't." The F bomb is not really so bad because the player was standing over top of him, and he used the F bomb to try to get the kid to get out of the way.
Right.
Well, we have a rule against profanity. So if we say, well, we don't overturn ejections because, number one, I'm not at the game, my staff's not at the game, we got an official who is right there.
Mhm.
And so once you start trying to overturn calls of officials, then you lose officials.
Mhm.
So is that an appealable situation? That kid has to miss a game, has
Right.
to miss a contest. So now do they appeal that to me? And if I say, well, I can't overturn it because I wasn't there, okay, now does that go to the superintendent of public instruction? So they have no idea.
But apparently, it's going to go right to them. It's not going to go.
That was my question.
He said it's going to go right to the.
Exactly.
They're going to create
Independent board.
the Board of
An
Education.
independent board.
Yeah, they're going to commit a committee out in the Board of Education, and all those go to them. And I was like, if you have an appeal 3 days before the playoffs, and it's like 40, 50 people with that same type of thing, I could see it getting messy.
Well,
I do want to ask you, though, Q, and I want to come back to this, but just off the topic, cursing. If you curse in a game and the official gives you that penalty, you do have to sit out one game.
That is correct. That's right.
Is that too harsh because everybody curses? I curse in the classroom.
Couldn't that be related? Couldn't that be downgraded to
I want to
disqualify?
get Q's response.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So guys,
is that too harsh?
No,
it's not too harsh.
These are student athletes. They are high school athletes who we are trying to teach lessons so that when they get out into the real world, they don't just think that using a curse word to their boss. They're walking down the street and they don't like the way somebody looked at them, so they use a curse word to say, "Don't look at me." That's why, we have a crime rate that is, out the wazoo right now. And we want our young people to understand that, words matter. And there are so many words in the dictionary that we can use and not resort to profanity. And that's what we're trying to teach, is that there are other ways to express yourself without being profane. And if you use it in a classroom, Langston, shame on you.
Well, can we not change this to a disqualification? And the reason I ask is that many of these kids, many of our student athletes, grow up in an environment that's all they hear and that's all they speak, and then they go to class and in school, and that's maybe what Langston meant.
That's what I was getting at.
It's a continuous in school all day long. It's part of their
culture,
vocabulary, their culture. Couldn't we just disqualify them the game instead of ejecting them? So tell them, go to the bench, you're out for the rest of the game, and not eject them, because ejection carries a very hard penalty, and in CMS it carries actually a 2
make sure they remember what they did.
I agree with the sentiment 100%. I think we should try to produce highly disciplined people. That's one of the
She's scratching her head.
Let me help you out here. I'll help all of you out here as a school administrator and an athletics administrator. I tell my student athletes all the time, because we have to cultivate still an understanding that an educational endeavor, that what we do in a school setting, that every setting on the school campus is a classroom, whether traditional or non-traditional. The field, the gym, the court, the theater where you watch the great spring play or the great music concert, all are classrooms unto themselves. And when students try to differentiate between one venue or another, I ask them all the time, if you are going to behave in a certain way and exhibit a certain demeanor or decorum in what you consider a traditional classroom, then why should I or any of my coaches believe that you will be able to respond appropriately to what we need you to do in a competitive situation when you're representing the school and we need you to do something specific in a situation that requires a certain demeanor and kind of personal decorum? It's the whole thing. People are trying to proliferate a notion that, well, okay, we got the school over here, and here's insert name school, and in this wing over here we do the academic part, and in this wing over here, this is where we play sports. And in this wing over here, we have our fine arts and this, that, and the other. There is no academic or educational or formational part of a school. It's the whole thing.
That's exactly what I said.
If we try to segment it, education-based athletics are in trouble.
So to carry that further, step into CMS, into any school in CMS. I don't care which school it is. Spend a day in CMS and see what you hear. The problem, the fact is words evolve and their usage evolves.
And so it's not just CMS, it's all the schools, public and private.
I know it is, but I'm just using CMS as an example.
Let me just say this. Let's not try to say that the culture is because what you permit, you promote. And if we permit kids to just use profanity, then we're promoting that. And as Alex just said, we promote it to the extent that they think that they can use that in everywhere, in every place that they go. And that's just unacceptable to me. I didn't grow up that way.
I understand.
My expectations, my parents said, this is how you talk. And so we have lowered our standards to such a point now that we think culturally we have to accept. I don't think you ever have to accept something that is inappropriate. Okay. And that's just not the culture I was born in.
I don't disagree with you, Ms. Tucker. Yeah. I want to bring you back. The endowment has been a big topic of discussion with the lawmakers. They feel like you guys are not using the money effectively. And I showed Mr. Johnson where you guys had given back $23 million over the past 10 years. And his question was, what about how much of it was the last 3 years, as though you had to give more back? And I showed him it was about $10 million over the last 3 years. Can you just kind of really quickly explain the endowment, what you guys are doing with the endowment? Because there was I think there's some concern with the lawmakers that you guys created this foundation a couple of days ago to handle the endowment.
Well, yeah. So because there was so much emphasis placed on the endowment to the extent that, the legislators made it seem like we had all of this money at our disposal. So you have to remember now that there are people who have given money and said, here's how we want you to spend this money. Those endowed dollars, we can't touch any of that money. The donor has said, you don't touch this money except the interest. And here's how much you give in scholarship. Here's the criteria. So those endowed dollars will be a part of the foundation. Absolutely no question. There are some endowed dollars that have been board directed, meaning when we started the endowment at a certain point, the board said, we want to invest these dollars and not touch anything but the interest, so that we're able to then delegate certain amounts to be able to go to certain causes. Mm-hmm. And it was those dollars that we used during the COVID years. So there are board quasi-endowment, and those are the ones that the board can say, here's what we want to do to help out our schools. And then you have the endowed dollars that we don't have any say in.
What do you say?
What the board is the one who really says, here's how we're going to do this. And so now, by having a foundation, they can't say that the NCHSAA board of directors is the group that will be determining it. It will be this board of trustees.
And there are other states that have such a thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What
There are
about
27, I believe that's the number, that have an endowment. And, they don't do nearly the things that we've done with our endowment. We give, not only did we create some scholarships, and when I say we, I'm talking about the board. We created some scholarships, such as the cheerleader scholarships. So those are scholarships, the minority scholarships that we give in the name of Willie Bradshaw. Those were created out of those quasi-endowed dollars. And so other states perhaps don't do the same things we've done. And where we made our mistake all of those years ago is that we didn't go ahead and set it up in a separate foundation then. And then what I will say is we have not done a great job of trying to help our schools understand how the endowment works.
If I'm a school, I need uniforms, I need facility upgrades. Shouldn't Q Tucker help me because she's got so much money and I don't have any?
No, because schools make the decision. Public school units, the central office makes the determination that we're going to have an athletic program and we're going to have these teams. And when that commitment is made, it is the responsibility of that public school unit to outfit its team, to say, here are the venues, and here's, how the venue is going to be built. Now, along the way, through our grant program, we have been able to help with some situations where the hurricane caused the loss of uniforms. Well, then in those situations, yes, those quasi-endowed dollars were used to help in those situations. But just to help a school build a track, put in lights. I mean, we have 436
helmets.
Oh, yeah, all of those things. That's just not the responsibility of any state association to outfit teams, because then where do you draw the line? Do we help we help this school? Well, we can't help this one. And well, why not? And so you don't get into that. Those are the responsibility of the school system.
And Langston, I'm just a real quick one. When Olympic was building their new stadium, I wanted highly to have a press box built for Coach Johnson. And so I had discussion about that, and if we could raise money to have a separate press box built. And we were told no, because it did not. It had to go through CMS building and so many other little things. That one of the questions that hit me on Twitter today was that question, or the day before I responded about the NCHSAA should be helping with equipment and should be helping with facility.
I get it all the time.
And exactly, and that's not their responsibility. That's the LEA and the school itself responsibility.
Yeah. Q, I can't have you on our show without asking you the crystal ball question. Obviously, this is a little bit different than the last couple of times I've asked you about a crystal ball. But with all these changes, I don't even know if you can answer this question. What do you see as the future of the association? Mr. Johnson said he wants to be 80 years old and still see the association running the state. He said about 10 times, you guys do a good job. So I want to know, and I don't know how much you do know right now, but what is the future of the state association and how much is it going to change?
Well, if you read the bill and you read it carefully, and our attorney has gone in and has pulled out everything as it relates to how we will be impacted if the bill is passed. It limits our ability to give scholarships. It limits our ability to give grants. It limits our ability to have corporate partners, supporters. Those things in and of themselves will limit our ability to function financially at the same level in which we have functioned. Now, we're not talking about having a Mercedes type state championship, but what we do is we want it to be a memory forever. And so, because the bill now limits the ability for the NCHSAA to be able to function year to year, and this is the other part that people don't understand, we don't go to the bank and get money out of savings to operate for 23-24. It is our responsibility as a staff to try to have people who support our mission, who believe in the student athletes across this state, and who want to be a part of that by giving corporate assistance so that we can reduce the expenses when we play in these venues. To go to Panther Stadium, to go and play where the Panthers play, to play at any of the venues we play, there are expenses that are involved. And by having corporate support, we are able to lower the expenses so that our schools are sharing in more of the revenues. Without corporate assistance, that will change. I worry about the association and how we'll be able to continue to do what we've done historically speaking. I think we'll find ourselves having to take many of our championships back to the high schools where the expenses perhaps can be lower. We won't have to have, the same number of security, perhaps, depending on who's playing. So I think that's going to change. Well, I know it's going to change because that's how it's written in the bill itself. Staff, right now, we have about 16 folk on staff. I worry about them and their future because there are those question marks that you talk about. I think that anybody who does not believe that it will change really does not understand then what it takes to run a state association. The only people in the country who know what we do at the NCHSAA are other state associations and other executive directors and commissioners. We talk about that all the time. We're our support system because we know what we do. And so I do worry, and I don't care what Senator Sawyer says, what Senator Johnson says, or Senator McGinnis. And I call those three names because they're the ones who made the response on Friday. They're the ones who sponsored House Bill 91. I don't care what they say. It is going to change the way high school athletics in this state has operated. The financial assistance that we've been able to give, it will change. And so those checks that some of our schools have been receiving at the end of the summer, I don't know that they will exist anymore, because they're limiting what that associated entity can do because they don't like the fact that we now have this foundation. And so to try to again control, they have said this must occur in order for that associated entity to function. And so that's troublesome. So that's my crystal ball. The crystal ball, I think, is it's very cloudy. I don't see much sun shining today, and I don't mind telling you that. I've always tried to be very, above board. I've tried to be like Michelle Obama. When folks go low, I go high, and I've tried to go high in all of this. I believe in the NCHSAA. I wouldn't have committed my career to working for an organization that was doing things in the wrong way, that was not looking out for the best interests of students. And so, whatever they say, and if they try to say that we have not been transparent, it's just not true. And I guess maybe we all have different definitions for transparency. And, but they weren't very transparent last Thursday night when they passed that bill. So, I guess, what goes around comes around.
All right. Well, Ms. Tucker, I appreciate your time. I know it's late and, coming on with us and being up blunt and honest. So thank you for coming on. Hopefully get you on later on. All right, guys, we're back. It's time to break down the Charlotte area game. The Guru, who's having to drink water because he talks so much.
Deer Park.
Trying to break down the out area games. Here we go, Guru. Tell me about some of these regional games around Charlotte.
Well, I'm going to let the guys talk about them because you guys, I feel like I did all the talking here at Chris's Corner, but I'll kind of lead our way through the discussion. Porter Ridge going over to Marvin Ridge, that's one of those Union County battles. We've got some phenomenal teams in the Union County area. Obviously, Sun Valley, Cuthbertson, Monroe, Forest Hills. I mean, you just got to rave about the level of football that we play. I can't forget Weddington over there in Union County. But I think this is going to be a great game. I think it's kind of two really good defenses. I think Porter Ridge might be a little bit better on the offensive side, but I also think that this is two really, really battle-tested football teams. And I have a feeling, like a lot of these Union County teams games go right down to the end of the line. And I'll throw it out to you guys because I know you've seen a lot of film on these two. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll shout out first, Coach Ryan Smith at Sun Valley. I think when I was at Coxmill last year, we played those guys in his first year there. Again, he was at Weddington, so understanding what it takes to build a program, knew that we escaped there with a 1-point victory, but knew again glad we didn't get to see him that next year. No surprise with the way he was instilling his culture that they're 6-0, even facing a 5-1 Cuthbertson. But I just wanted to ask the group. I mean, has Union County football got to that level of Charlotte Mecklenburg? I mean, we're seeing Porter Ridge, I think, only has 1 loss to Monroe. Marvin Ridge, 2 losses.
There's not a losing team in that conference. All those teams
has it gotten to? Union County football has been pretty good for a while.
Their middle school program.
Their youth
we're talking about
before.
Here.
I mean, we're saying good, but we're talking about pretty much every team that we look at. I mean, Sundown 6-0, 5-2, Weddington.
Grace, I think it's a slightly down year for Mecklenburg as a whole, and I think Union is a little more steady. I don't know if I would say they've surpassed Mecklenburg, but I think that middle, it's kind of like Catholic, that really good middle school football program. Like Sam, you have no idea who's coming to your school year, do you?
Yeah.
No.
But they have a
last year I did.
but in Union County, they know, and those kids grow up playing together, and it's kind of that same Catholic, Burns, Richmond, any of these good small town football teams is in a bigger community. I mean,
I'll tell you one thing. I live in Union County, and my kids are in soccer, 9 and 10 years old, and you're amazed at Union County, their youth leagues. They take a lot of time with the fields, the grass, everything that they do. You're seeing the dividends now of what they've put in about 10 years ago, and it's making overall sports better. Now, I don't know if they'll have the overall athletes maybe as Charlotte will provide, but you're talking about like the overall top to bottom, the Indians, not maybe the Chiefs aspect. Mm-hmm. They're way better on every playing.
Are you going to be a Porter Ridge parent or West Charlotte parent in a couple years?
Oh, if I'm, definitely my kid's probably going to go where I work. I got to keep an eye on
West Charlotte. Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Got a big game.
We've seen Porter Ridge in state championships. We've seen, of course, Weddington.
Yeah, I covered that game. Yeah.
I think the football, I don't know if Union County football this year is as good as it may have been in some other year, actually.
I agree.
I think they've been more level. I think Charlotte's did a little bit.
But they are very good this year. Grice is bringing a good point. And something I keep pointing out to people is that we have good football around us. Cleveland County, Union County, of course, Mecklenburg County. I'd like to see it get back a little better up in Iredell and Cabarrus, but there's not bad football up in Cabarrus County. We have good football up there.
I want to talk about a good game in Claremont, though, Dale, because we got West Lincoln going to play Bunker Hill. Both of those teams are unbeaten. Catawba Valley game of the year. Bunker Hill's more balanced. West Lincoln's is going to run. But I think, that's going to be one of the bigger games in the state. I don't know that a lot of people are talking about that game.
This is a big game for West Lincoln because, I see Chris has them moving up. They're slowly moving up, and kind of like East Lincoln last year snuck up on people as they just kept winning and winning and winning.
Yeah.
West Lincoln might be in that same boat right now.
Yeah. Well, Darren Ponder's done a great job there.
Yeah, the kid finalist for Mr. Football, the number 4 last year, Mr. Football. I mean, it's really good. And then
Raven Gap at Charlotte Christian.
Wow. Grice, you're going to, not Grice, Kim, you're going to Raven Gap at Charlotte Christian. This is, Raven Gap, the big Raven Gap coming down. The Christians stand a chance.
Of course they do.
I think they do. I mean,
Of course they do.
You said does Raven Gap have a chance? Is that what you said?
I said does Christian have a chance?
Oh, does Christian have a chance?
I think that's what I was. If it came out wrong, that's what I was intending to say.
Okay.
I mean, I think they do, but I mean, as Chris alluded to earlier, that Raven Gap defense, it's something. And then Charlotte Christian's gonna have to pull out their best plays in order to hope to pull off an upset.
I'm gonna tell you what, the two Chris Jameses are doing. I mean, no offense, Sam, but I mean they got to be Coach of the Year worthy. Both of those guys. They're doing. Mars Parker and Christian doing phenomenal jobs. Grice, I hope you saved your voice.
Well, that's a long. Also, that's a long drive from Raven Gap to Charlotte Christian. So if they're making that bus ride Friday to play, that could impact
that could definitely play a role. But it's time for Grice to break down the Charlotte area game of the week.
We talked about great, football kind of outside of the Charlotte area. And I think, two programs, one, of course, that's been well established, and another that's really seeming to emerge here in Forest Hills and Monroe. Had to choose this one as the game of the week. I think both of these teams, again, have had a great year so far. And again, this will really set the tone for which team, is going to win the conference, which team will be that one that kind of sets the pace as it relates to the playoffs. But let's get started to some of the keys here. So, first, can Forest Hills quarterback Brady Hibbert continue to be successful as he faces this stingy Monroe defense? Brady's doing well in the season with over 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns with only 4 picks. But we know Monroe is extremely athletic on defense. They've only given up 70 points so far this season. And we know in one of those games, that was 43 points to West Charlotte. So they've really been stingy and haven't given up a lot of points. So Brady's going to have a great game and minimize those mistakes as he's done all year in order to have some success. Monroe's got to get Jordan Young involved early. Another guy we've considered for Mr. Football as one of the best players in this state. I mean, as a guy that does it as traditionally as good Monroe players do on both sides of the ball. Forest Hills has got to neutralize him, on the offensive side of the ball with 400 yards and 4 touchdowns on the receiving end, and also playing defense with 19 tackles and a sack so far. We know, just like last year, I think he had 4 picks in a game. That ball's in the air, and they're not taking good care of it, and Brady makes a mistake. Jordan's going to intercept that ball, and goodness, when he's got the ball in his hand, he's a dynamic player. And then finally, Forest Hills, again, they are having a great run here so far. But this is the game that's got to get them over the hump and help them to reach that elite status. They had a first-round loss to Shelby last year, another perennial power in that 2A group here. But a big win over in Monroe against something that they haven't done in a while will really do something to help them as they continue to reach that status. Coach Dees, I think over there is doing a wonderful job. This will be a monumental step in them taking that major next level as they try to be state championship contenders here. But this is going to be a great game, and I'm excited and hate I get to miss it, but I know it's going to be a game of the week level game that's going to take place.
Sam, you have a real
I knew this is coming.
Yeah, you have a real unique perspective of this game because you tried to schedule Forest Hills. You said they were running. That's what you said.
Oh, they ran. They didn't even accept the phone call, really. They're like, nah, we're good. They had a week 2 opening. Try to jump on it. Just, never played Forest Hills. Just they've been climbing the ladder. I wanted to see if we could both try to we're both trying to get into the next stratosphere in our conference, and they ducked it. Yeah, and so I called Johnny.
You saw Monroe head-to-head, so you had to have looked at Forest Hills or you considered playing them. So tell me, what do you think about this game?
I just think Johnny Sal is just more of a legendary aspect of one of the teams that we played this year, Monroe, they've extremely well coached. Their depth will probably match Forest Hills. They just couldn't match the depth that we had. We have a little bit more depth, and it hurt them in the later stages of the game. But if they had the depth, they probably beat us, to be honest with you. And I wouldn't be surprised if Monroe wins this game by 2 scores. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Sam providing the bulletin board material. All right,
they post it up, whatever you do. You still got to play. You still got to play Monroe.
Stingers.
You still got to play Monroe. Still got to play.
Right.
That's true.
All right. You said they don't have any stingers.
Deer Park people, during the break in the back, Grice said I don't do a good job with the toss. So Grice is going to handle the toss to the Deer Park. Go ahead, Grice.
Yeah. Hey, when I'm thirsty, I definitely go look to enjoy a Deer Park water. We're so glad that they're a sponsor of Talking Preps. And when you're thirsty, be sure you grab a Deer Park water.
Deer Park is celebrating its 150th anniversary. Let's take a look back.
Deer Park, that's good water.
You can taste how pure Deer Park is.
Deer Park, that's good water.
Filtered naturally beneath the earth for a crisp, refreshing taste.
Deer Park.
Deer Park,
Deer Park. Deer Park.
that's still good water.
After 150 years, there's only one thing left to say. Deer Park, that's still good water.
How did you all get in here?
Thunderdome time. You ready?
All right, man, here we are. Let's go ahead and lock the door. Get ready.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome.
Here we are, man. Once again, three-way in the deal, coach versus coach. We're going to have a good one today. We already did the coin toss before the show, so Coach Griner, as you always defer. So, Coach Grice, get that offensive team out there. I know you got your play script, so here we go.
3 and out, baby. 3 and out.
Coach, were the hits against Nick Chubbs and Travis Hunter dirty? And if so, do we need to have a rule change?
It's one of those where I think you almost have to look at the two. I mean, I think the Nick Chubb hit was kind of to me, it seemed like kind of a freak thing. Like, I don't know if he intentionally went towards the guy. I do think the Travis Hunter hit was dirty. I think that there was a little extra sauce there and maybe something, again, if it could have warranted an ejection, that one for sure. You know, it's a situation where guy made the hit, guy stood over him, you could see that there was that intent there to do a little extra and ensure that there was pain inflicted from that standpoint. I don't know if I'd go as far as a rule change. I mean, I think we're a little reactionary there, but that hit with Travis, against Travis Hunter, no question about it in my mind, was dirty though.
Yeah, I mean, the Nick Chubb, that's just regular football. I mean, it was just a freakish thing, like Grice said. Can't disagree there. There's nothing you can do to change that. It's just football. He's going to plan right when his legs plant, all his momentum's going to that, and it went through the perfect spot. It went through it like butter. It was nasty to see. Travis Hunter, though, definitely it could be worthy of a disqualification for the rest of the game for what he did. I think that would be definitely a rule that I wouldn't, it's not like he cursed. He really tried to hurt someone. And, I think that is warranted of not necessarily ejection, but a disqualification for the game. Minimum 15-yard, but maybe we can change those rules of maybe you have to sit out 12 minutes in the game. I don't know what we could do, or a half, something like that to try to, uphold those type of dirty hits on the Travis Hunter deal.
Right. All right. Well, hey, let's stick right here with you, Coach Griner. Sorry, I'm looking. My Twitter feed's blowing up right now for some reason. I don't really know why. Anyway, hey, this is one that's really personal with me because obviously I've seen it. Do we have too many high school football all-star games here? We got the Shrine Bowl, the Queen City Bowl, the East-West All-Star Game. If you look at them on the calendar, they go like 12, 16, 17, or 15, 16, 17. They're like right there in a row. Not to mention, the 252 game out there, the 828 game, and all those other games. I mean, do we have too many?
I would say we have too many for today's times. With people graduating early, a lot of the great players you're not going to get to see in these all-star games. So the all-star games are not really necessarily all the all-stars. That's the only issue you're really going into. And then the East-West, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, that's maybe great for kids maybe trying to get into the Division II or just trying to carry out their career. But who wants to go get injured in the East-West all-star game basically in the summer before they're going into their college environment? I don't see the point of that. I would love to see the Shrine Bowl get back to the standard of its gloriness. I miss that. I think the Queen City Bowl has done a phenomenal job to highlight kids around this area. They've done a tremendous job. So anytime you had that capability where you're uplifting kids, we're not seeing the best talented kids doing it because they're leaving to go to school early. That's the only problem.
I don't think there are too many games. I think the problem is that we have too many egos, and I think if we segmented people where they should be, I think we would kind of get rid of a lot of these. Being from Greensboro, I can never say that the East-West All-Star Games are unnecessary. I think they do a good job of highlighting players from other areas that maybe don't get that visibility. Those guys that aren't – that game is not for the guy that's going early. That one's emotional for me because that's a game I've watched most of my life and a game that I really enjoy and hold near and dear to my heart. So I do appreciate that aspect of it. I think the Shrine Bowl as they continue to make it is that standard game that should highlight our best. I think the specific areas, the Queen City Bowl, and again, the bowl games in the 252, those games are good for those lesser guys. Again, nothing warms my heart more when I see a guy in Charlotte from maybe a Harding, or see a guy from another school that, maybe doesn't get that shine throughout the year, get an offer to go to college for free just off of this game. I don't care if it's one kid. That means that game to me was worth it. And there's no much more pride that you can have for a kid playing for their city or playing for where they're from. As you know, that's something I hold near and dear to my heart, where I'm from and playing for your city and what you believe in. I'll never say there are too many games highlighting kids.
I agree with you.
I would love for the big colleges to be able to attend these practices. They're not allowed to. That would change who comes to those directly.
Okay, guys, we're going to stay right here with you on the beginning of this third question right here. Did Oregon coach Dan Lanning and his team expose Colorado as a fraud last week?
Ooh, y'all, the words, fraud. Ooh. I wouldn't call them a fraud. Now, if you bought something on your credit card with their credit, you might be able to get the charge back. I may say that. Again, no top 20 team should be going into Autzen Stadium to Oregon and losing by 5 touchdowns. I mean, if you're a top 20 team as well, going in there with all these players that are highly rated and highly touted, just like Oregon, you can't go into Autzen Stadium and lose by 5 touchdowns and it not be close. They looked on different levels. They look to be, whether it's coaching, whether it's players, they look to be players that are playing in different groups. They didn't look like both Pac-12 or Pac-2 or whatever, Rose Bowl, Big Ten, whatever conference they're in these days. They didn't look like they're in the same conference. It looked like a G5 team and a Power 5 team, the way that they were playing. So to me, I wouldn't use the F word. I think that's a dirty word. I don't want to get kicked out of a game either. But if I use that credit on my credit card, I might be able to get the money back and be able to charge something else. I'll say that.
Yep.
Absolutely not fraud. They're not a fraud team at all. I thought Deion Sanders has done exactly what he's doing. He stands behind his team no matter what. He's just his first year trying to build this program. What if Bo didn't play in the Oregon game? Okay, do you think they're going to win by 5 touchdowns? Well, Colorado didn't have their best player. Let's look at that aspect. Travis Hunter does everything, both sides of the ball, offense, defense. He's the heart and soul of that team. He makes them feel invincible. Hey, I was the best player. I'm here. I can help put you on my back. It helps the team's morale play a little bit tougher. When they're going into the game like, man, we ain't got our best guy. I mean, the morale drops down a little bit. It's hard. They're riding that coattail of Travis and some of the other guys. They're raising up their level. They're good players too. But you're talking about 4 to 5 really good players, and everybody's a significant drop-off. But you got to play with that passion still. They're not a fraud. It's just they didn't have their best player, and I think that they still, when they get him back, they're good to go.
If they don't have their best player, then they're not a top 15 team. You take out one player off a big-time team, they're still going to be able to roll. You're not losing by 5 touchdowns. Travis Hunter ain't putting 3-point stands. His hand ain't in the
It's a different – no. That's
Charlotte
a different route.
And forced 5 field goals and hung in that game. Just saying.
Who'd you say? What did you say?
Charlotte.
Yes, but what I'm talking about is
very similar to Colorado. A lot of new players, new coaches.
Travis Hunter means more to his team.
One dude.
Travis Hunter means more to. I'm not saying they would have won the game.
Oh, I'm saying that.
I said it would have been a closer game. If you take Bo out of that game, you think they win by 5 touchdowns?
Well, they ran for 6.3 yards per carry.
No, they don't win by 4.
You could play defensively differently if Bo's not in there. So
how big a deal will Colorado hosting Oregon next year be? How big a deal would that game be?
What did you say?
It'll be 8 o'clock start next year, I guarantee you.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody hates on Deion, they have no clue about he is not disrespecting anybody. He puts a chip on his shoulder. He promotes his team. He does everything exactly.
Stump on their O.
What was the quote this weekend?
Travis Hunter literally was on,
One team's playing for clicks and one team's playing for wins.
Yeah, but I didn't like that.
That's not true.
The coach had the camera on him. I'm not about the camera.
I'm picking on Deion.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Dan, I would say the same thing too to motivate me.
Like I said, we played against Griner.
The same thing.
We went against Griner. I'm telling them in a 7-on-7 that Griner thinks we suck. He doesn't think we're good. He thinks we're good old suburban boys that ain't good enough. I said all those things to our kids in 7-on-7 that Griner didn't say. No cameras around. Imagine what I'd say for a game. Griner's supposed to say the worst thing.
And I'll say the same thing. Them privileged kids, all them privileged kids, Yeah, I'm telling you.
I'm gonna let Guru have your last. Brian, I'm gonna let Guru have your last word. But I was curious what you heard tonight from Todd Johnson and Q Tucker. What do you take away from what you heard?
Myself?
Yes, yourself. You.
Oh, I absolutely love both sides of it. I think some transparency from both sides. I know a lot about Q. I've been around Q for a long time. I think they do an amazing job. Like you said, about 90% of it is unbelievable. That 10%, I think I would love to see a little bit difference. I would like to see a little bit more gray area and look at every situation. I think Todd is trying to provide that.
You sound like me talking about gray area. But go ahead.
Listen, I sound like a politician.
But every situation deserves that opportunity. Like we are cutting some people, undermining some people, and it's their lives. Like, what if Brahim Murphy never got that extra chance? Okay? That story, it's got nothing to do with me. It's about Brahim's story. There's some kids that are falling by the wayside because of we're not looking into the situation fully.
If you start, flip side, if you start down the gray areas, and I want that, but if you start down the gray area slide, everybody becomes an individual thing, and it's hard to administer rules when each rule has to be administered differently. And if I let Brahim slide, well, then I got to let Chris Hughes.
It ain't slide. It's just look at the situation.
Or I look at that situation because everybody has a situation. That's why I asked Mr. Johnson, how are you guys going to deal with all these appeals? Because 300 people are going to appeal.
That might be true. More than that, Langston. It's going to be way more than that.
That's going to be.
You were able to fix your problem, Sam. But what's going to happen when you now let parents go directly to the appeals process?
That's what they're doing.
You don't understand, okay?
Without the support of the school. And the school says, no, this is not appealable.
No,
you can end around that. Everybody's going to do that.
There's some schools during the summer when you're talking about they're trying to get ready for school. They are not focused on the athletic of a kid. I'm telling you, I've seen it, Dale.
We're not talking about in the summer. We're talking about
Sunday, that's when kids become eligible sometimes.
That's when kids of the playoffs.
Yeah, but I'm talking about kids' eligibility sometimes too. That's involved and right in before August.
I think that's going to be a mess. Cameron, what did you hear tonight? What did you think?
Well, I was not a part of the senator one, but I did hear what Q had to say, and I really thought she was just straightforward. I mean, I tend to lean, with the NCHSAA, but I mean, I'm not, here to just pick sides per se. I think it's very, I think them doing it, in the middle of the night was a little shady to say the least, but.
The senator said it wasn't done in the middle of the night, though.
The senator was wrong. They attached it to, they took and sliced out everything, just like Q said, and they attached it at the last minute to another bill.
That was going to pass.
That is in the middle of the night stuff. Whether
I have to agree with I have to agree with Q on that. What I wanted to do tonight, though, guys, was give you, the public, a chance to hear from the politician and from the administrator, and then you can make up your own mind. I'm just asking these guys what their takeaway was. You probably read my column, you know how I feel. I just hope that the children of this state are not too greatly affected by this decision, and that some of the things that Q said about how the association will run and state championships and those things didn't sound good. I hope that doesn't come to pass. We'll see. We'll just have to keep monitoring this, and hopefully we'll have them on at the same time at some future point to talk. Go ahead, Sam.
What wouldn't be like if we can't play at North Carolina or NC State and we get to play at a smaller packed stadium? Name a state championship game that you've been to that the environment's been unbelievable. Name one.
Wake Forest, almost every time.
Yeah, almost every time. Every time, not almost. I think
almost. They played in Charlotte.
I know the one I played in wasn't.
They played in Charlotte. Wake Forest, A&T, be incredible.
I got you.
Yeah,
incredible. I don't think the high school stadiums are good, Sam, for all the things that go around the championship. For you as a coach, yes, but all the things that go around the championship, the officials, the media, the Q staff, it's not accommodating. I've been to state championships, high school stadiums. They're not fun. They're really.
I think it's diluted when you get into one of them stadiums. I think there's another way to go about it. There's other stadiums across the state you can use.
Well, Sam, I'm not a fan of what we're doing now. I've been telling you play it at Jerry Richardson. I've been saying you play it at A&T.
I would love it.
Play it at Winston-Salem. Those
Love it.
size stadiums, we got a ton of them in this state. Those size stadiums, we got a ton of them. All right, so Guru specifically asked for Sam's last word. So, Guru, what's your last word, man?
Well, anybody who's been following Twitter the past little bit saw that I kind of took a little bit of a stand and took offense to something, that I saw that was out there in the media that I just don't necessarily agree with. And I do want to address it here for the whole world to see. And it's a dear friend of our shows, Desmond Johnson, Tobacco Road Sports. It's a very slippery slope that I'm here kind of on this stance talking about. And I do want to throw it out there that, that it's nothing in offense to Desmond. And, we appreciate so much what media entities are willing to do to go out there and promote these young high school athletics and these teams and coaches. And to the extent of what Desmond and his Tobacco Road group does is amazing in drawing awareness in that triad community. And we've had him on the show. He's amazing. His insight when it came to, the East Forsyth and Huff game last year. But I do want to throw this out there. And again, there's hills that I'm willing to die on and there's hills that I'm not willing to die on. But this is just one that just touches me in a way that, again, that I've kind of dealt with in the past. But are we really doing high schoolers and kids and the game and everything a favor when you're throwing your team shows, your coaches shows, at bars, at breweries, at alcoholic-based establishments, with coaches having a beer on the table or whatever like that? Is that really what we want to teach and what we want to show is the most appropriate things when it comes to kids? Again, we're talking about very impressionable teenagers. Many of us are parents of teenagers. I know that I am, and high school age teenagers at that, kids that have gone through there. So, is it really what we want to do? Yes, I know we've all been to Chili's, we've been to the Longhorn or Texas Roadhouse or places like that. And sure, I've even had a beer with my kids around, but I just mean having a show at a bar or something like that, pushing alcoholic beverages and things like that into kids. I don't know. Is that just really the image? I know if we had Alex Bass on here, he would talk about the NCHSAA being education-based athletics, and absolutely it should be. And again, I just want to say, is having an event like this at a brewery the right answer? I don't know. I mean, I'm 50 years old almost. I've only been around a certain amount of time. I've obviously been around this football game a long time. I know as a business owner with Carolina Preps, I've never accepted money, nor would I, from a company out there that touts alcohol, because I just don't think that that's the right thing, an appropriate thing to push to kids. So I don't know. I'll let you guys answer that, but I just think that that's really not the answer and really the place that we need to be promoting our businesses when it becomes to high school kids. Because, I've been around a student who drank and drive as a high schooler and got killed. I was around that. I've seen it firsthand. And, I don't want anybody ever to have to experience that. And I just don't want to see that happen again.
Maybe worthy of an ejection more than cursing. I agree.
Well, I see why the Guru wanted to take Sam's last word. He had a lot to get off his chest there. Guys, I promised y'all no more 2-hour shows. Grace, I promised you no more 2-hour shows. And look what I did tonight. I had a 2-hour show. But I think it was warranted.
Double the pay.
I think it was
2 bottles of beer.
I think it was warranted. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. We're going to break down the Mr. Football list. Sam and Grace and Chris have cut it to 16 players. So you're going to find out who are the top 16 players in the state right now as we get down to our final 3 and then our final 1 when we get down to the Mr. Football right around Christmas time. Thank you guys for joining. That's the Guru, the number 1 voice of high school football. That's Coach Grice, the number 2 voice of high school football. That's the Guru in training, Cameron Williams, who's got that cool new background looking smooth. Then we got the historian, Dale Rossdale. Thanks for joining us for all those questions and answers with the politician with Q. And there's Sam Griner, the coach everybody loves, right? Everybody loves Sam. I'm Langston, and we are Talking Preps.